Here are some YouTube shorts from guys who have questions for atheists.
One of the most unsettling questions an atheist has to answer is there meaning to life?
What do you mean by meaning? Life doesn't have any inherent purpose, if that's what you mean, but it does have consequences, if that's what you mean by meaning. That's not unsettling at all. In fact, it would be far more unsettling for our existence to have some kind of purpose that's not of our own making. I would be far more unsettled if I were created without my consent to serve a purpose I never consented to serving.
One of the world's most famous atheists, Richard Dawkins, wrote a book called A River Out of Eden, a Darwinian view of life, and in it he says, the universe that we observe has no purpose, no good, no evil, just pitiless indifference. That is the consistent view of atheism, that life has no meaning or purpose. But we don't live that way. We live as if things matter in this world.
Yes, I live as though things matter in the sense that my behavior has consequences. Why does a God need to exist in order for my behavior to have consequences?
We live as if life actually has meaning, and you have meaning and are here for a reason.
I do not, in fact, live as though I'm here for a reason in the sense that I live to fulfill some prescribed role. I live for my own satisfaction.
Everybody on this earth exists for a purpose, and we're created by God and for a relationship with God.
Our purpose is to have a relationship with God? What a cringy purpose. Why would I want such a thing? Why would I want to cooperate with serving such a purpose?
That Jesus created you specifically with value, with dignity and worth, and that your life actually has meaning. Follow for more.
If by meaning you mean that it has consequences, then that's true whether there's a God or not.
Atheists cannot answer this question. We know time, space, and matter was all created at the Big Bang.
No, we don't. Time, space, and matter, as best as we can tell, do not precede the Big Bang. But that doesn't mean they were created at the Big Bang. To create something means to cause a change from a time in which that thing does not exist to a time in which it does. Even to say that something came into existence would mean that there was a change from a time when it did not exist to a time when it does. Since the universe is the space-time continuum, and there therefore was never a time when time did not exist in the 13.7 billion years or so that time has existed, and obviously no time before time, there could never have been a change from a time in which the space-time continuum did not exist to a time when it did. Since it's not even coherent for there to be a time when space-time did not exist, there can be no change that can be called an act of creation or a coming into existence. The idea that the universe can be created or can come into existence is altogether nonsensical.
But if it was all created at the Big Bang, what caused the Big Bang?
The Big Bang didn't have a cause. It was simply the earliest moment of the expansion of the universe that has always been occurring. There has never been a time when the universe wasn't expanding. You cannot cause something to happen at a time when it is already happening. Since there was never a time when the expansion of the universe wasn't already happening, it cannot have a cause.
The cause would have to be something timeless, spaceless, and immaterial.
In other words, it would have to not exist. To say that something exists is to say that it has location in space-time. To say that something is timeless and spaceless is to say that it exists nowhere and never. In other words, it is to say that it does not exist at all.
And the atheist would say, we don't know.
Hi, I'm the atheist, and that's not in fact what I would say. I would say that the Big Bang did not, and in fact could not have, had a cause.
So if you don't know, why could it not be God?
It could not be God because it couldn't coherently be anything. Also, even if it were merely a matter of not knowing what the cause of the Big Bang was, asking why couldn't it be God implies a God of the gaps argument.
And if there is no God, why is there something rather than nothing at all?
When people ask theists, why is there a God instead of no God, they often reply that God exists by necessity. I hold the same to be true of the universe. The question assumes that nothingness is the default state of reality, and that existence is therefore some deviation from the default that needs an explanation. This is a baseless assumption. There's no reason to assume that existence per se needs an explanation. I'm not sure that the idea of the complete and total absence of any and all existence is even a coherent idea.
I'm going to say, when I look at reality around me, when I look at the creation of the universe or the fact that the universe exists,
Not only was the universe not created, it isn't even coherent to say that it was created.
Fine-tuning.
The supposed fine-tuning of the universe is actually evidence against a god. The fact that life would be impossible if the parameters of the universe were only slightly different is only true if there is no all-powerful God. If an all-powerful God existed, then it would not be impossible for life to exist in a universe with even slightly different parameters. Because an all-powerful God would have the power to put life into a universe with any constants. If we lived in a universe that had parameters that made the natural development of life impossible, then that would prove that the presence of life is not merely a natural phenomenon. The fact that, as best as we can tell, life is impossible in a universe with even slightly different parameters, is much more consistent with the idea that we were not put here by an all-powerful being who had the power to put us into a universe with any set of parameters.
The more objective moral values.
I can't see any objective moral values when I look at reality.
When I look at what appears to be design in life, and
I don't see anything in life that bears even the remotest resemblance to design. I see complex mechanisms with specific consequences, but unlike apologists, I don't conflate such a thing with design.
where life came from.
The fact that life is made out of chemicals seems to indicate pretty conclusively that life came from chemicals.
When I look at consciousness and
Consciousness is a set of actions like perceiving, thinking, feeling, etc. What do you think is carrying out these actions, if not the brain?
free will.
Do you believe that you sometimes do things for no reason? If you don't, then you don't really believe in free will. Anytime you say that you decided to do something for a reason, you are saying that said reason determined your decision.
And the laws of logic and our ability to reason.
The laws of logic are human inventions. They don't exist as some kind of spooky Platonic form. Reasoning is another one of the cognitive activities we carry out. With what do you think we carry out such an activity if it's not the brain? Even if you think it's the soul, how is that evidence of God? Even if you could show that souls exist, that wouldn't be evidence of some big, all-powerful soul that created the universe.
I think anybody coming onto a debate stage has to give causes for why those things exist.
I gave explanations for all of the things you listed, which do, in fact, exist. The other things you mentioned don't actually exist.
An atheist posited this question. If God created time, doesn't that require time?
Yes, because you can't create something at a time when it already exists. Since there was obviously never a time when time did not exist, and it is a contradiction to say that anything occurred before time, time cannot be created.
To create time. The idea of God creating time, that needs time for him to make time? Right? We're talking created time.
Yeah, we're talking about incoherent nonsense.
He made it. You don't need it to make it.
How do you make something that has literally always existed? You can only make something if there was a time when it didn't already exist. Since there was never a time when time didn't already exist, time cannot be made.
In my view, my opinion here, the first moment where the universe, the stuff, exists is the first moment.
Right, and at that first moment, time already existed and therefore could not have been made. The only way you can make something is if you start at a time when it doesn't already exist. That's impossible to do with time itself.
So in the first moment, it just was.
Exactly, it already was, and it was therefore too late to create it. It already existed in the first moment, and you can't create something when it already exists.
So the idea is that God created not just out of time, he makes time, or that it takes a moment to make time. It's just that there's a first moment. And to me, this magnifies the incredible power of the one that made time.
I suppose something would have to be unfathomably powerful in order to do something altogether incoherent. To everyone who helps me out on Patreon, you're a big help. Thanks so much.